This girl was kidnapped and then raised by monkeys in the jungle. After 30 years, this is her. In the early 1950s, Marina Chapman was born in Colombia. She lived a normal, quiet life with her parents until she was almost 5 years old. Then, one day when she was playing in the garden with pea pods, a strange truck pulled up alongside her. There were other neighborhood kids playing nearby, and the men jumped out, grabbed Marina and the other children, placed chloroform rags over their mouths, and quickly incapacitated them. She'd been kidnapped. The next waking memory Marina had was being carried, slung over a man's shoulders through the thick Colombian jungle. Leaves slapped her face when suddenly a man in the group shouted and everyone began to run. In the chaos, Marina was dropped on the ground, and before she even knew what was happening, she found herself all alone in the middle of the jungle. Exhausted and confused, she curled up against the base of a tree and fell asleep. When she woke up the following morning, she was surrounded by curious monkeys. They watched her closely. Some even poked and prodded at her hair and eyes before the novelty of it all wore off and they wandered away. Thinking her kidnappers or someone would come back to find her, she waited where she was. When no one came, she turned her attention to the intense hunger and thirst that had taken over her mind and body. She watched as the monkeys played and followed them, all the while looking for something to eat. She eventually came upon a pod filled with a sticky fruit that she assumed was okay to eat. The seeds inside tasted good, and she scarfed down as much as she could. Not long after eating, her stomach started to cramp up and waves of pain washed over her. She fell to the ground, and that's when an old monkey pulled at her arm and led her to a nearby waterhole. Marina drank the muddy water and began to throw up the seeds, which made her feel a lot better. At first she'd been scared of the monkeys, but after looking into the old one's eyes and seeing that he meant no harm, she started to trust them. After the old monkey, who she named Grandpa, accepted her, all the other ones did as well. For the next 5 years, they were her family and taught her everything she knew about how to survive. She learned to climb trees expertly, figured out what was safe to eat and what wasn't, groomed herself, and even communicated with them by mimicking the noises they made. She estimated that for 5 years she lived with the monkeys before one day she happened upon a group of hunters. Desperate for human contact, Marina went up to them but could no longer speak a language. She could only grunt. The men took her with them to a nearby town and ended up selling her to a local brothel owner. She was forced to clean all hours of the day and was beaten, so she ran away and lived on the streets. Other homeless kids taught her how to communicate again, and she eventually got a paying job as a domestic servant. Soon after that, she was adopted by a really nice family who sent her to Bradford, England. In England, she met and later married a scientist named John Chapman. They had children together, and Marina finally had a normal, stable type of life. She never saw her birth parents again or the group of monkeys that raised her, but she'll forever be grateful for them all.